Get one for my baby and one more for the road. The long, it's so long. The long, very long.
This is OPB, Oregon Public Broadcasting.
Support for tonight's programming has been made possible in part by a grant from Norm Thompson Outfitters, Portland's escape from the ordinary for apparel and gifts, at Northwest 18th and Thurman and at the airport's main terminal. Additional funding has been provided by you, the members of Oregon Public Broadcasting.
The Pacific Northwest, a bastion of North America's natural beauty. Its lush forests and winding rivers have captivated the hearts and minds of adventurers and romantics, a fact that has remained unchanged since the days of early westward expansion. Upon reaching the Oregon territories in 1849, one settler wrote, quote, "The mountains rear their peaks in blue masses, high above all others I've seen, covered in beautiful timber that could only be found between here and the Pacific Ocean." While the efforts and labors of these pioneers have grown into the cities of Portland and Seattle, the surrounding wilderness have remained almost undisturbed, just as they did in the days of the pioneers and the natives before them. The dense forests not only protect the region's natural wonder, but hide their ancient secrets. As summer fades into autumn and the rains beat down upon the Pacific Northwest, a chill sets in that reminds us that the unknown, the extraordinary, and the uncanny still exist. In modern history, the regions of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington have been a hotbed for UFO sightings, inexplicable incidents, and paranormal encounters. While many paranormal entities and cryptids have been reported by the people of the Pacific Northwest, only one has achieved a truly legendary status: Bigfoot, or Sasquatch as he's known to the natives. For centuries, the Native Americans have told stories of large, hairy, ape-like creatures who roam the wilderness. Some tales portray Sasquatch as a wise, tall, old creature that protects nature's tranquility and the natural beauty of the Pacific Northwest. A guardian spirit to some, a nightmare to others. Other accounts portray Bigfoot as a hostile, territorial creature who confronts any and all who invade his domain, often with deadly results. In 1924, the Oregonian published an account of gold prospectors being confronted by a group of gorilla-like men in the Mount St. Helens region. These prospectors were attacked and subsequently took refuge within a nearby cabin.
92.3 KGON, Portland's not.
And this area near the shoulder of Mount St. Helens would forever be known as Ape Canyon. However, amongst all of its sightings, Bigfoot's most important encounter would come in 1967 with the Patterson-Gimlin film. Nearly 40 miles south of the Oregon border, nature enthusiasts Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin captured footage that purportedly shows the cryptid of legend, Bigfoot. In the years since the film's publication, experts have tried to either confirm or debunk the existence of Bigfoot based off of this footage. All tests, all studies have resulted in an inconclusive result. What can be said conclusively is this uncanny footage has captured the imaginations of millions of Americans, so much so that Bigfoot has become a pop culture.
Now that's Tom Peterson.
About 122nd way to Ron Tonkin Chevrolet. We're ready to say yes to the...
For creative play.
This is Kenner's Bionic Bigfoot. Released back in the 70s, this is one of the holy grails of the $6 Million Man toy line. Before Kenner's absolutely massive home run record-breaking hit with the 1978 3 3/4-inch Star Wars toy line, Kenner's bread and butter was a 12-inch scaled $6 Million Man toy line, released originally in 1975. The toy line began pretty simply. One 12-inch scaled figure based off of Colonel Steve Austin, played by Lee Majors, and this is undoubtedly one of the most iconic toys of of the early to mid 1970s. This figure was so successful that Hasbro tried riding the coattails of the Bionic craze, trademark, by creating Mike Power, the Atomic Man, for the G.I. Joe Adventure Team. While he's a bit silly and antiquated, Mike Power's actually worth his own video. There's a lot of interesting nuance to that toy. But needless to say, the G.I. Joe Adventure Team would retire, and Steve Austin and the agents of the OSI would take their torch. The $6 Million Man toy line would expand to have multiple versions of Steve Austin, as well as some awesome outfits that are super 70s, as well as a small but solid cast of additional characters, including the heroine of the sister series, Jamie Summers, the Bionic Woman, and Steve Austin's boss, Oscar Goldman. Who doesn't want a little action figure of their boss? There would also be a couple of villains, including Maskatron, which is a super cool action figure and is also the only vintage John Saxon action figure, as well as the Fembot. Now, finding the villains can be a little tough. They were made in lower quantities than the heroes, but the hardest releases to find are the final two: the Venus Space Probe and Bionic Bigfoot. Now, despite looking like a vacuum cleaner, the Venus Space Probe is pretty badass. It's kind of like a Mechon or a Dalek from Doctor Who. It's basically a hate tank. However, of all the villains, the most iconic is Bionic Bigfoot, due in large part to the multiple appearances in the $6 Million Man TV show. Bigfoot first appeared in the aptly named Secret of Bigfoot and was portrayed by the late, great Andre the Giant. Now, it's been a hot minute since I watched the episode, so I don't exactly remember what Bigfoot's secret was. I don't know. Maybe it's that embarrassing photo at the Halloween party. But what I do know is this iconic episode resulted in a 17-inch action figure ready to battle the Bionic Man. Considering when this figure was made, Kenner put in an impressive amount of effort to realize the character. There's an impressive amount of sculpted detail work on him to communicate that he is absolutely covered in carpet's worth of hair. Add on to that his portrait sculpt is well detailed enough you can see an intimidating scowl and his piercing eyes. There's only really two letdowns on this figure, the first being that it is based off of the second Bigfoot actor instead of Andre the Giant, and the other is that his articulation is extremely limited. Both G.I. Joe and the $6 Million Man were very articulated figures for their time, however Bigfoot only has 4 points of articulation. 2 at the hips and 2 at the shoulders, and these shoulders can be very problematic over 40 plus years. Instead of being pegged in or pinned in like your standard universal joint, Bionic Bigfoot's shoulders are actually held to the body via a tension band. Over the decades, this band becomes prone to breakage and failure, and unfortunately is very difficult to replace without extensive modding. This engineering was also used on the Kenner 12-inch scale Darth Vader and Chewbacca as well. So unfortunately, he's much more of a display piece than anything else, especially considering only 2 of his 4 points of articulation are particularly useful, and even then, he doesn't have a very stable walking stance. However, he does have one gimmick outside of being big and looking cool. See, if Steve Austin is in a life or death tussle with Bigfoot, he can punch him hard enough in the crotch that he can severely weaken Bigfoot.
My groin!
Just like any man. But unlike your average man, a panel pops off of Bigfoot's chest when this happens to reveal computer circuitry. And that is the real secret of Bigfoot. No, not that his crotch is his weak point, that's pretty obvious. It's the fact that he is a cyborg. There's also this coin slot here that Steve can grab onto and toss Bigfoot around. I'm not really a fan of this gimmick, if only because, I don't know, it feels a little weak sauce to me. Now, full transparency, I think Bionic Bigfoot is super badass. He's got an amazing display presence, he looks great, and it's super iconic. It's Bigfoot, but as a toy, he just leaves a little bit to be desired, you know? As somebody who is and talks to other toy collectors, this thing is almost viewed as a cryptid unto itself. It's not the rarest toy in the world, but there is a mystique around it, like it is the actual Bigfoot. I do really think that's what gives the toy its merits. There's a mystique around it because it's a little rare, and there's an audacity around it because it's a large-scale action figure of one of North America's greatest cryptid legends. Now, over the decades, Bigfoot has taken on multiple facets and meanings in our cultural lexicon. Here in Portland, Oregon, as well as the other parts of the Pacific Northwest, Bigfoot is seen as kind of an icon of environmentalism. Now, obviously, the Pacific Northwest has tons of greenery and forests that we've spent decades cultivating and protecting, but I don't mean environmentalism just in a bureaucratic sense. I also mean it as a mindset, as a love, an appreciation, an affinity for nature. So in that respect, Bigfoot kind of represents the mystique mystique and appreciation of our natural wonders here in the Pacific Northwest. But that's all hippie talk. I want to talk about movies and TV shows. Now, in 1967, there was the Patterson-Gimlin film. Two Bigfoot enthusiasts were down in Northern California and purportedly captured Bigfoot on tape. This is the iconic footage of the ape man lumbering in the woods, or maybe it's an ape woman. Depends on who you ask. It's admittedly kind of creepy footage just thanks to how low fidelity it is, so give it a couple years to percolate in the underground, and by the early 70s, you have a little bit of a Bigfoot craze, most notably with grindhouse low-budget horror films. If you've got the budget of a ham sandwich, it's pretty logical to go into the woods for instant production value, and if you're going to be in the woods, well, a monster like Bigfoot makes perfect sense, and you see this in movies like Night of the Demon and The Beast of Boggy Creek. On TV, you had some documentaries like the Leonard Nimoy In Search Of series, which focused on cryptids, alien encounters, and paranormal events. But of course, Bigfoot's biggest TV role is on The $6 Million Man. Here he appears in a couple episodes, first played by Andre the Giant, then later Lurch from the Addams Family. In the $6 Million Man continuity, not only is Sasquatch real, but he's in fact an alien cyborg guardian sent to Earth. It's a little much in my opinion, a little too close to Chariots of the Gods. I don't know, that's a little too spacey, a little too sci-fi for my taste. I like Bigfoot to be a terrestrial entity, you know? More of like a guardian of the Pacific Northwest, kind of like a big hairy Tom Bombadil type. I think my favorite Bigfoot appearance on TV actually comes from the Sid and Marty Krofft Super Show or Variety Show, where we get Bigfoot and Wild Boy.
Out of the great Northwest comes the legendary Bigfoot, who 8 years ago saved a young child lost in the vast wilderness and raised that child until he grew up to be Wild Boy.
That might be one of the most 70s things ever recorded, this side of the Carpenter's Space Special and the Star Wars Holiday Special. But my point is I like a fun Sasquatch. I like a heroic Sasquatch, you know, one that's gonna fight for truth, justice, and the American way. And, you know, protect the trees and the rivers and all the little critters and all that good stuff. My point is I think a heroic Bigfoot is actually very underutilized in fiction. Like, I don't know, if I had the ability to reboot the G.I. Joe adventure team from the 70s, I'd absolutely have Bigfoot be part of the crew.